Sometimes nothing happens in decades, and sometimes decades happen in a week. That is a quote by Vladimir Lenin, and I want to talk about this today. It encompasses disruption, and it encompasses in specifically what happened in the last couple of weeks in the car market. This is the Not Even Wrong podcast. It's September 14th, 2020. This is Krim Delco. Since the last update on September 10th, we are up 32%. The market is up 1.5%. For the year, we are up 199%. The market is up 5%. We're outperforming by 194%. So if you put $100 into Orange Capital Partners and $100 in the S&P 500 on January 1st, 2020, by now you would have $299 in Orange Capital Partners and $105 in the S&P 500. Main driver, Tesla. We also had some nice returns on our CRISPR index. Microsoft and Intel and RTX have been relatively flat. So Lenin's quote that sometimes nothing happens for decades, and sometimes in a week decades happen. It encompasses, in my view, exactly what happened last week in the car market. I think last week, so the week after Labor Day, will go down in history as the moment when Tesla took over the transportation market and the traditional car makers declared that they're finished. There's two events that happened which solidify my argument. One event was Elon Musk visiting the Volkswagen CEO in Braunschweig, Herbert Diess. Diess was actually having a meeting with Musk, which is not crazy. He's been the one executive in the global car industry that always took Musk seriously. And he's also put a strategy in place, in my view, that is credible. So you could think that Volkswagen actually has a credible strategy to do something. But his behavior was cheap, crass. It was he was trying to literally take a selfie with Elon Musk and brag about it. And this just shows me personally that under the hood, within Volkswagen, there's probably a lot more problems than we think. If a CEO has to do things like that just to be relevant, things can't be good. This is not a position of strength. This is not a position of power. This is a position of weakness, a bit like a teenager with insecurity trying to brag and attract somebody or something to themselves. That is how it comes across. And of course, as CEO of a company like Volkswagen, that is not a good sign. The other even worse example is GM striking a deal with Nikola. Now, I don't want to go into details about Nikola. The company, in my view, is highly questionable and certainly massively overvalued. The fact that GM is striking a deal with them in itself it's fine. It's not the end of the world. You have OEMs constantly trying to do things with startups. That's not the problem. The problem is that Nikola is supposedly the startup with all the tech, but then the deal specifies specifically that Nikola will buy technology from GM, battery and hydro technology, so for fuel cells. So in a sense, you have a startup here, which by its own admission, by its CEO, is changing the world, doing all these things. And then that startup is buying tech from the OEM, which supposedly needs a startup to be relevant in the future. So there's something inconsistent here, something not clear. The market has been very confused. The Nikola stock was up 35%, then down 50%. Now it's, today it was up another 10%, and after hours it's down 10%. This is a complete disaster in terms of how the market is acting, what the people should be expecting. Of course, my view on this is that you absolutely stay away from something like that as an investor. But more importantly, for GM, what do you do here? And my view, again, like with Volkswagen, there is a lot more trouble under the hood than we might think. And that's not a good sign for shareholders of GM, nor is it a good sign for shareholders of Volkswagen. Now, what has happened within Tesla that is driving these executives to such extreme, in my view, silly behavior, that is the big question for us as Tesla investors. I would say that there's definitely expectations for the battery day. Tesla will unveil a few things which will probably make it very difficult for anybody to compete with them, such as a battery that lasts longer, is cheaper. So that means that the cost will come down, that the reliability of the cars will go up. It just will become a lot more difficult to even contemplate competing with Tesla. I think the other thing which is happening in the market is the Model Y is outselling probably everybody's expectations. I myself, I'm an owner of a Model Y, and the car is just unbelievable. It is for what you're paying is just great in every sense. Yesterday we took a road trip to Santa Cruz, down to Santa Cruz from San Francisco, an hour and a half. It just feels like you're gliding down the air or something, and then it's beautiful, and you barely touch the steering wheel. Of course, you have to hold the steering wheel for all the reasons we by now know in terms of autopilot, but you still don't have to focus so much on keeping the lane because the car is doing it for you. And then you have just a lot of other things, like the music is great and the noise is low, and you can charge, and the charge is enough to just take you to Santa Cruz and back, and you don't even have to think about anything. It's just all these little things, the technology inside the car, the UI, which, you know, by the way, something people don't talk that much about. I just recently listened to the Electrek podcast that they have once a week, and they mentioned, and I think that's a very good point, the UI of Tesla in itself, just the user interface between the driver and the people in the car and the technology, that alone, in my view, has legs ahead of anybody else, and that, of course, is a big factor when you buy a car. So I would say these are the things. I think China is also a big factor, although demand in China seems to be relatively muted. It's okay, but it's not as great. It's not selling like hotcakes like maybe some people thought, but that's fine. There are always things that are a little bit less than expected, and other things are more than expected, so that kind of cancels each other out. I think specifically today, on September 14th, the stock was up 12%, and I think today was big merger day. It was particularly the announcement of NVIDIA buying ARM, which drove tech in general, particularly semiconductors and anything tech, hardware particularly, was up a lot. I think mergers are always good for the market. It shows confidence, it shows future optimism, it shows all the things that you need for growth stocks to continue outperforming. And as we discussed several times in this podcast, if you have confidence for growth, the real growth, and they have zero interest rates, then valuations, of course, get stretched a lot, and then stocks keep going up, and values of companies that actually deliver real value can go up a lot. So to summarize, again, I started this episode with the Lenin quote that sometimes in decades nothing happens, and then decades happen in a week. I think this is exactly what's happening in the electric transportation market. I don't even want to call it the car market anymore, because this is a lot more than just a car. This is a company. Tesla is a company that is innovating, delivering on several fronts, changing the transportation market, changing the energy market, changing the software for hardware market in transportation. So these are the things, and it's happening fast. It's happening much fast. It's accelerating. The market share gains are accelerating. The OEMs are feeling it a lot harder in their sales. That is driving CEOs such as Mary Barra from GM and Herbert Diess from Volkswagen to start doing, in my view, silly actions just to stay relevant or to prove something. And I think we're witnessing disruption in front of our eyes, clear, fundamental disruption of a massive market, and it's showing in the valuations of Tesla, and it's showing in the valuations of the other car companies. And I think to end this episode, I just want to state one more thing. We are all scratching our head how Tesla is 400 billion and the others combined are maybe, if you add them all up, are 400 billion. And the question at this point is not anymore, why is Tesla 400 billion? The question is, why are the others still that much? Thank you.